Grandpa, tell me about the good old
So
days.
tell me about the good old days, Troy.
So we were talking before the stream, and we were talking about the old board games we used to play. And really, I mean, if you're an adult playing board games, you're playing these like boutique type games that are really expensive, $60, $70 games,
Oh yeah.
that are very, very complicated. The simple games that were a lot of fun are really meant for kids. And I have some fond memories of those things. Obviously, the one that I thought of first was probably the hardest one for a kid to keep intact, and that was Mousetrap. Do you remember
Oh
Mousetrap?
yes. Oh yes. Yes.
It was this
Ah.
three-dimensional build it as you go, Rube Goldberg-esque, kind of thing, where if you landed on a certain spot, you'd have to trigger the mouse trap, and if everything was set up exactly right, it would drop the net, and you ran the risk of being caught in the trap. And it was a lot of fun. Sometimes the fun wasn't even playing the game. It was, okay, let's just set up the whole thing and see if we can make it work.
I would do
because
that
it
all
was
the
a
time.
Rube
Yeah.
Goldberg thing.
Mhm.
How
They should have
about
made more. They should have made different varieties. No, I remember Mousetrap actually. That was one I do remember a lot.
Yeah.
And you had the guy ready. He's on like the plank and he's going to dive into the swimming pool, right?
Yep.
And that would trigger something else, and then something else would trigger. And the idea is eventually the net would come falling down.
But it was really a part of the game that if it didn't go right, the game continued, and that was part of it. If everything worked perfectly, Mousetrap, but if it didn't, the game continued. It was an exciting a way of dealing with a random element of the barely working mechanics of the game. But the other thing is that there were all these parts that you needed to keep straight, and for a kid, losing those parts was very, very common.
Oh, I'm telling you, would lose parts to board games all the time. Like I think my brother had a copy of Dungeon, the old
I do.
the old TSR board game, which was almost like a board game versions of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
And you take it on a camping trip, we'd lose half the pieces. Eventually,
Yep.
I bought myself a copy of it when it got re-released. I think in the mid '80s,
Mhm.
I got that version of it. I don't know if I still have all the pieces to it. I was pretty good about holding on to stuff when I was a kid, but you lose things regardless how good you are. And I think they did a re-release of that a few years ago too. But Dungeon was a big one. I used to love the board game in that because you'd be a group of adventurers entering a dungeon, and there'd be all sorts of things on the board that you'd look at, like this giant worm, like all sorts of things out of Dungeons and Dragons, basically. And the idea, I think, was to get to the middle of the board to get the treasure, but then you also had to get out of the dungeon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back out. You had to also get back out and get to the exit first or something. I seem to remember that. It's been so long since I played it, but yeah.
Yep.
I'm trying to think though. Actually, I can share with you a game from my youth. Does anybody want to look at it real quick? I don't know if the sound's going to come through because the share screen stuff. I apologize if there's going to be a boomer moment, but let's go ahead and do share screen. Share screen. Share the entire screen. Why not? I don't think there's anything questionable on the desktop right now. Okay. All right. Sorry. Anyway,
make the joke I made earlier.
Okay, I know. We will keep. Yeah, this is Fireball Island. Now imagine you're a kid and you're like, "Whoa! It's like a whole island in my living room. Look at that."
Yeah,
it's like Indiana Jones. Like that kid looked like Belloc. He's in the white suit. Like I want to get the jewel. No, but a thundering fireball comes after you.
I do remember this commercial. I didn't have the game. I didn't play it, but yeah, that clearly was inspired by Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah. All right, cool.
But you know what else it reminds me of? Do you remember the Dark Tower?
Yes. My brother had that one. Oh, yes. Okay.
I love that game. I actually have it. The problem is that the tower in the center doesn't work. Literally, the game is useless without it. And there are people online that, offer to fix the electronics in it and stuff. And I've been wanting to do that and it just never happens. And a little while ago, there was a Kickstarter for a new version of it. a new re-release of it, and I didn't get in on that because I was like, well, I'll get mine fixed, and well, I just never have, and it just sits taking up room in our basement.
Oh,
I miss that game. I really, really
I think
do.
my brother still has his. We haven't touched it in years, though. That's one of those things too, where it was a battery operated tower. So
Yep.
heaven help you if you left the batteries in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
used
there
to
was
have
a mechanical element to it. The thing would turn inside and stuff, and it was very rudimentary, electronics inside. So they did go bad easily. Although I guess my understanding is that also makes it easy for people to fix that know how to work circuit boards and stuff like that.
I,
But
I I remember being the kid. That was like the most advanced thing ever because you would have these
I know.
pieces on a board, and the pieces you had were pretty neat looking. Okay,
Yeah.
but then like the thing would make noises and like it would flip
Yep.
around
Da
and it
da
would
da
be
da, and then you'd be
yeah.
fighting the brigands, and the dragon would come in and stuff. And
Yeah, I remember that
yeah,
game. No,
yeah. It was a lot of fun.
that was a neat board game. I think Vincent Price did the commercial for that, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
There was also a series of like VHS board games where you were limited to an hour because that's how long the video took. But instead of dice or you would use dice, but at certain points the video would play and it would command the certain character to do certain things. The one that stands out the most in most people's mind is the game Nightmare. That was
I
actually a
remember
really
that one.
cool game. Yeah.
That was the one that had the creepy dude in the black
Yep.
cloak who looked like the Emperor from Star Wars, right? He's
Kinda.
like
Yeah.
game master, and like I'm sure this whole thing, the TV commercials. I imagine the parents were saying that's satanic, like
Probably.
but
But it was a lot of fun. I remember playing that my first year in college over at my girlfriend's house with her family, and it was like I just loved it. That was and the other one that I have is the Star Trek Next Generation interactive VHS game, where a Klingon played by Robert O'Reilly, not specifically Gowron, but the actor that played Gowron, steals the Enterprise, and you happen to be up to five crewmen that are on board with him, and you're basically doing a what do you call it, like a reverse Die Hard, trying to retake the ship.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
clever idea for a board game.
it really is a lot of fun. I have that one, and because it's VHS, who has VHS anymore? The nice thing is you can go on YouTube and you can find the VHS converted to YouTube, and I just pulled it down and turned it into a DVD so I can still play the game.
Yeah, you could. They could always release it though on with a DVD,
They
couldn't
could.
they? I
They
mean, why don't they
absolutely
just
could.
do that? They could do that. That'd be neat.
Because the people that market for Star Trek are dumbasses. That's
I keep
why.
forgetting we know who's in charge of these things.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay. I'm
And they
sorry.
don't and bad reboot that wouldn't make money on that, so it doesn't happen. But
Well, they probably would make money.
and there
On it.
was
That's
one
the
other,
thing.
and I'm struggling to find it was a Dungeons and Dragons type VHS board game.
Was it called Dragon Strike?
That's it. I've got that one too.
I remember because it basically comes with an instructional video, and it's almost like the next step up from Dungeon, where you had to I'm sure they have that video on YouTube too, where like one will be the dungeon or whatever the equivalent of the dungeon master. It was made by TSR. I remember that, and like it had like the kind of like cheesy real people, but like very static backgrounds. You could tell the green screen.
It's definitely green screen. It was
that was probably impressive for the time, but like you look at it now,
and I'll tell you what, I mean, it was, and I got that. I actually still have it sitting in plastic, to be honest with you, but I got it, and it's kind of cool. I'm gonna pull that out one of these days, probably in between, on Wednesday nights, if we can get our one player to get over his COVID fear, and start actually meeting together again when we end one game. Well, what do we do next? How about Dragon Strike?
There you go.
And they'll be like, oh, I vaguely remember this. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I did mention one other board game to you. It wasn't a great game, but I had great memories of it. Maybe because I was so young at the time. That first year, like 1977, when Star Wars came out, the first board game they put out was Escape from the Death Star. And you played, you played Luke and Leia or Han and Chewie. and you were kind of racing to get to the end and get out of the Death Star, and then you had to maneuver through TIE fighters to blow up the Death Star. It kind of like combined those two elements together. And really it had this Monopoly-esque sort of feel to it, because you'd land on certain, spots, and you would pull a card, a specific one of two different kinds of cards. But there was the possibility you'd get sent to the detention block, just like in Monopoly, going to jail. So it was a lot of fun. And I do have the original version of it, but a couple years back, Hasbro re-released it with an exclusive Governor Tarkin figure in the style of the original 1970s Kenner figure.
Because they never released.
They had never released a Tarkin figure back in the original Kenner days.
Interesting.
So I actually got like 6 of them.
Hey, you know what? You can always sell them on eBay or give them out to friends. Okay.
Well, this was, a speculative thing, and it turned out that there are just so many of them out there. Nobody is going to be. They're not going to go up in value, so it's not going to be easy for me to resell them. What would be a cool thing for me to do, since I have them, is Governor Tarkin's figure is very customizable with a simple, boil and pop head swap. There are customizers out there that put out heads for some of the other Imperials from that scene at the conference room in the first Star Wars movie. So I might just make a bunch of custom figures.
Cool.
But yeah.
What is Perfection? I keep seeing people in the chat talking about it.
So Perfection was a game. It was kind of like, what was do you remember the game Memory, where you'd have a bunch of cards lying down and you'd put up 2 and you were looking for matches and you had to remember what they were? Perfection was similar in that you wanted to pull out 2 of the same kind of. No? Netter, you're on an open mic. Why don't you just say it?
Perfection was the one where you had a bunch of pieces that you had to put into their slots in like 30 seconds, or the whole thing would pop up and throw your pieces all over the place. And they were all different shapes. I had that sucker down. In 8 seconds, I had every single piece in there.
That's what it was. They're very complicated little plastic.
I remember that. I never played it, but I remember seeing commercials for it now. Okay.
I actually did have it. I didn't get to play it much, but it was, it had a timer thing. And the idea was, if you could get all the pieces in place in time, you just hit the timer and stop it and you won,
And if not, they'd all blow up in your face, right?
It would pop up and they'd all shoot up.